Hi, I am Randy Kim. Welcome to the Banh Chronicles, a podcast featuring stories of the Asian experience and connecting with other communities that serve to help us understand the different journeys and future making work that folks are doing. The Banh Chronicles is now part of my Substack, Banh Bites, which you can subscribe at no cost. Hey everyone. So I am very excited to bring on this creator. This is a person that I've been following, or this content I've been following for quite some time. It's fodder culture. And so to begin, I want to acknowledge that this creator wants to remain anonymous because this is a platform that's meant for the Vietnamese American, Vietnamese diaspora, Vietnamese community. And so I want to say that I'm very honored to have you on. I have been following your content for a number of years already, and one of the things that really stands out for me is, growing up being Vietnamese and Khmer American, I never got, I always felt like my family was a crazy one for, doing the weird things like, I don't know, keeping shopping bags or, doing some of the things that I thought was unorthodox in the society that I grew up in, being in the Chicagoland suburbs. And, seeing this content made me relive a lot of these memories about what my family did and how common it actually is among other Vietnamese families. So, yeah, I'm actually very curious about what was the genesis in beginning viticulture.
Sure, definitely. Well, first off, thank you, Randy, for having me on. Appreciate it. Thanks for the kind words. I started culture 2 years ago, back in June 2023. And prior to all that, I had started a Vietnamese apparel brand back in 2010. So in terms of like being part of the Vietnamese culture and community, and like trying to represent our culture in the right light, I feel like I've always been involved in some way somehow. Even dating back to like being in VSA back in college, right in the early 2000s, and growing up, I've always been proud of my culture and my heritage and where my family came from, and have always tried to find ways to express that pride. And photo culture was really just something that is an extension of myself in a way. I really try to put my personality behind the profile, even though I don't show my face or let people know who I am, which in general is done by design because the goal for photo culture is it's really about the culture and the community. It's not about me as an individual. But the things I do share, I always feel like they are part of my upbringing and my experiences, and the goal is to see who can relate to those same experiences. And what I've noticed is it's a lot, right? We
Mm.
all kind of, I always say it in the comments, like, the Viet simulation is real because we all go through very similar situations. Obviously, there's variations to it and things aren't always one to one. But for the most part, a lot of the things that we did experience growing up as Vietnamese, at least Vietnamese Americans and maybe those in the diaspora around the world, um, we all find that commonality within these experiences I'm sharing on the profile, whether it's memes or just general, like, humorous videos and other cultural related topics. That's kind of like the reason why I wanted to do photo culture. And I've been, working hard at it for the last couple of years to get it to where it is now. And, really been exciting journey. I've been able to meet a lot of creators and just meet new and make new friends and just getting more in touch with the Vietnamese community outside of my area that normally I would not have that same access to. So,
Yeah, thank you for sharing this journey. And did you grow up with a lot of Vietnamese folks in the community that you were raised in?
uh, in my community, it was a lot more diverse than your typical Orange County kind of Houston area, right? Where I'm located, I obviously want to keep that anonymous as well. It was definitely a mix of different ethnicities, and different backgrounds. So I actually grew up without that much Vietnamese uh, without that many Vietnamese friends to begin with. So, but I've always, like I said, just try to find ways to stay connected to my community and culture. So,
Yeah, it feels very relatable because I did not grow up around many Vietnamese or Khmer folks.
mhm, mhm.
And when I was going to school, there was no Vietnamese or Southeast Asian folks. So I felt like I was forced to assimilate in a way. And I felt like I had to abandon my family culture in order to navigate, being in a Western society. I wonder about like when doing photo culture,
Mhm.
did it surprise you when you got a lot of responses from the Vietnamese American and the Vietnamese diaspora communities in terms of how they related to your content? Was it a surprise for you? And also, what did you discover in your connections with these communities?
To answer about being surprised, I would say the growth part of it was a surprise to me. I think that it was something I did not anticipate growing so fast, right? I knew that the things I was sharing had there was intent behind it. Like I would only share content that I feel like can be relatable. Not just to post content just randomly, but actually post content with intent that others will relate to it, like how it relates to me. So I would say that I'm not surprised that it related to people, but I was surprised of how fast the profile grew, right? And to this day, it actually became it is the largest Vietnamese community profile on Instagram. So that's something that I'm, proud and surprised at the same time. Still one of those things that it feels surreal, especially like only doing this like 2 years ago. But, um, the response has been tremendous. A lot of people have made different connections and friendships through the profile or reunited with old friends because they saw them comment or follow the page. So in that aspect, I feel, just blessed that I'm given this opportunity to represent the community in my way. I don't feel that I am a representative of the entire Vietnamese community, right? That is
Mhm.
something that I don't claim to be. And I don't try to make that the case either. But I just feel that if I post something, I hope people can relate to it. And for the most part, it has. And what I've learned as well is just, you know, meeting all these different people that DM me. They always kind of like say thank you for creating the profile. And to me, it's very humbling because, like I said, I don't do it for any kind of fame or glory. Like I said, no one even knows who I am. And I intend to keep it that way forever because, like I said, it's not about me. It's about our community.
Mm. How about the Vietnamese community in Vietnam? How have they responded? Because I know that obviously it's a very different experience for them. And I'm very curious to know if you've had feedback or responses from that community and how they have interacted with your content.
So in terms of like the audience, 25% of my following is actually from Vietnam. And when I first started photo culture, one of my goals was to provide content that is both from the diaspora outside of Vietnam and then content from Vietnam, right? Like Vietnamese creators from Vietnam. And I wanted to provide that balance because I want to see our community kind of united as one because unfortunately, there are some divisive elements within our community, which usually boils down to politics and the flag, right, that represents the country. Um, I grew up with that, um, being an important element to my upbringing. But since starting photo culture, my main goal was to, like I said, just have our community see ourselves as one unit, and because we're stronger as one than we are as a divided community, right? So a lot of my content does not focus on politics at all, and I intend to keep it that way, forever.
Hmm. Do you feel that pressure to insert political content or having to respond to what's been going on around the world that affects the Vietnamese communities? Because I know that this is a very difficult subject. I mean, this is something that I also wrestle with, being a content creator in the past and now getting back into it. Do you feel that pressure from other Vietnamese folks, especially with the current administration? Do you feel that pressure to have to speak up in some ways?
For me, I haven't felt the pressure. Obviously, sometimes certain content will create that dialogue within the comments, but I haven't been given any feedback or been told like, hey, I should lean one way or the other,
Hmm.
right? And personally, I don't feel pressure because I know what my goal is for the profile.
Hmm.
So with that in mind and with that mission, I don't ever feel the pressure to, like I said, lean one way or the other. I'm just going to continue to post things that I feel are just more relatable to our community and things that we could, like I said, share in common with each other versus focusing on things that would divide us, you know?
Hmm.
So.
So were there any inspirations that you saw of other past and current Vietnamese or Asian content creators that help you to create this platform?
I mean, you know, definitely got to give respect where respect's due. One of my friends is the one that created Asians Never Die, which is, one of the biggest Asian uh, IG profiles out there as well. That was, he set the tone back in, I believe, 2017 when he started that. So really kind of like was one of the first initial profiles to really bring upon this, meme culture, like these type of humorous videos or having Asian content be on the more humorous side, right? Because we always obviously fight with like the model minority and like, us being perceived in a certain light. So, Asians Never Die was obviously one of those first few inspirations. And outside of that, I've always respected other creators, but with photo culture, I definitely feel like I had like a very intentional approach to it. And that I feel like is um, a little bit more unique than what others have done in the past, um, versus, some other profiles that I've seen before have like a very, you know, I would say one way type of one style of like posting, right, content when it comes to like, sharing Vietnamese type of content with their following. Mine is really trying to be very, like I said, very specific to showcasing content from Vietnam and from the diaspora around the world. And that is something I feel like, kind of makes photo culture a little bit different than the other profiles right now. So.
Yeah, what have you noticed among the Vietnamese diaspora and Vietnamese content creators and working with them? Like, what have you been able to collaborate on, and what have they looked like for you?
Yeah, the collaborations between me and photo culture and other creators has been awesome. We like to the way I like to approach it is to brainstorm, ideas with these creators. And for the most part, these brainstorm sessions usually end up bringing really good pieces of content because at the end of the day, we're all trying to share very similar, like, experiences, but with different perspectives. And that's just been a fun experience for me, especially the last 2 years. I've worked with like Phuc Map. He's from Kentucky. He's very well known in the Vietnamese community. Like, he's a white guy but speaks great Vietnamese, right? Um, been able to work with, just several creators around the world, and it's been a fun experience since then. So.
Hmm. It's been 50 years since the fall of Saigon. What goes through your mind when you have observed how your family, your peers have endured so much since that history? And what have you observed from the digital community as a whole when they share about the Vietnam War and its impact on their families among younger generations?
For my profile, I definitely pay respects to the annual anniversary of the fall of Saigon, but I don't highlight it in a way where it creates a divide. Meaning, every April 30th, that becomes like a very, very like contentious day of like people having a big argument on both sides, right, of the spectrum. And I usually take that moment to obviously pay respect and honor those that, lost their lives, right? I am also a result of that, war because my parents came here from Vietnam, and settled here in America. But I try to use the silver lining in that is because although it was tragic, a lot of people lost their lives, and nothing we could do could ever take that back. The the silver lining is that if the war never happened, the Vietnamese culture would have not spread the way it did. You would not see Vietnamese people in America, Australia, France, right? Canada, you name it. Where Vietnamese cultures have established themselves the last 50 years would have never actually happened if it weren't for the war. So I usually like to have people see things in a different perspective, while obviously, like I said, paying respect to those that had lost their lives along the way.
What do you hope to continue to uplift with the Vietnamese community? What do you see as an outcome through this platform, which I know that you have, shed some light on, but I was wondering, what do you hope to continue to do?
For photo culture, my biggest hope in my the journey that I continue to push forward with is I want to make sure that we never lose sight of, what really brings us together, right? Which is going to be these experiences that we all kind of had shared in a way collectively because it's even though we all grew up in different areas of the world or different parts of the world, we somehow had a very, very similar upbringing, right? And I just want to make sure we always remember that upbringing and we don't forget like, our family, our culture and our traditions and to always look back and feel that hey, there's someone out there that went through the same thing as me and continue to make those connections within the community.
We are seeing the shift happening in our community. The adult Vietnam War survivors are aging and passing away. How do you think the millennial and Gen Z and maybe even Gen Alpha, how would those folks carry the Vietnamese American or Vietnamese diaspora legacy?
It's a great question. It's really up to us, right? Those are in a position right now that are starting their families or have their own kids right now, in their 30s and 40s. Um, I know that one thing is that's a big struggle is the language, right? A lot of Vietnamese Americans, whether you're talking about millennials or Gen Z or Alpha, you know, it's becoming more difficult for those generations to actually speak Vietnamese fluently.
Mhm.
And it's really up to us to pay attention to it and focus on it and keep pushing that kind of heritage on the next generation, right? Whether it's through language classes, whether it's through just, your annual holidays like that, um, and just the general Vietnamese tradition of like, eating together as a family, right? That's how you really carry that on to the next generation is that you instill those experiences in them, instill those experiences with them, they will be able to carry that on moving forward.
Yeah, because um I think I had a conversation with my cousin a week ago and he said that it's like in the last 50 years we as a Vietnamese population are the fastest to lose our language in a sense versus like the Chinese community or other Asian communities in a sense. And it makes me sad, but it makes sense given what we had to deal with, being in a foreign land and our parents just having to navigate very quickly to to survive and also being able to raise a family. I'm actually learning Vietnamese at the age of 42 years old this past summer, and it's kind of wild how that has changed me and changed my interactions with the Vietnamese community. And also, I've watched my peers um, also trying to find ways to navigate the Vietnamese language. So I'm curious about like your own navigation, especially where you're at in your life, and trying to navigate your Vietnamese identity and culture, especially as our parents, our aunts and uncles are moving on.
Yeah, I mean, culture has been probably like the biggest, you know, anchor for me, right, moving forward because I'm pretty much tapped into the culture every day. And that has allowed me to really get more in touch with my my heritage and just, making sure that I keep a, conscious mentality of like keeping the language alive, right? Trying to have conversations with my parents on a daily basis so I can keep practicing my Vietnamese, right? And simple things is even just like making sure that I'm eating a Vietnamese meal at least 2, 3 times a week, or obviously getting prepped for like different holidays and traditions, right? Whether it's Tết Trung Thu or Tết in general next year. Like those are the things that are important to me where I feel like as long as I keep those traditions alive and keep that culture close to me and close to my heart, um, I won't ever lose it, right?
Hmm. What can we expect in the future for photo culture?
Right now, I would say that my one of my biggest goals is to provide a platform for creators to actually start building their own, original content, that's actually financially backed. So I would say that one of the biggest goals in the next 5 years is that Culture will become some type of production company or studio to provide this opportunity and platform where we don't really see that opportunity often at all, right? It's been great to see, different actors out there and actresses represent our community, right? Olivia Munn, Maggie Q, Kelly Marie Tran, Lana Condor, even going back to Dustin Nguyen, right? 21 Jump Street. It's been great, and those are the legends. But I don't really see like that next generation getting that opportunity. Although the Asians in media are obviously getting a lot more light spotlights now, right? Thanks to like K-pop and K-drama and whatnot. But I feel like the Vietnamese side of things, the entertainment side has always been lacking. And
Hmm.
I definitely want to leverage photo culture's platform to pretty much provide this opportunity for current and future generations of creators. So,
Yeah, that sounds amazing. And that sounds something that we really need because actually I was having a conversation with another relative of mine. She's like, wow, I know our Vietnamese culture is very popular with food. We know it's better. We know it's great. But what about pop culture? Like our Vietnamese community consumes so much K-pop. What about our entertainment? What about the vast opportunities that we have as a culture? So I think this is very important to name, and I'm really glad that you're uplifting that. One last question. What are the things that make you laugh, that makes you smile about your own Vietnamese experiences through the father culture and, and interacting uh, with the community members?
I think the thing that makes me laugh the most, and not to be self-serving or, egotistical, is really just like the memes that I make. So I'll make a lot of memes that, really are just kind of like, I would say my inner child healing, right? And I'll give you an example. We all were told the same thing when we were growing up as kids. Our parents would say they found us in the dumpster. Kim Jong Tong Rak, like that's the phrase they would say, right? They like literally they found us in a dumpster. It's like we was like, oh, like where did I come from? When we always had these questions growing up, they would tell us the most traumatizing thing that we were found in a dumpster. And to me, it makes me laugh because we, when I post things like that, you can just see like all the comments of like how we all were told the same exact thing. Like, how did all of our parents have the same exact script? And I even asked my parents one time, like, why did you guys even say that? Like, what was the purpose to say that we were found in a dumpster? And you know what my dad said? So I don't know, we were just joking around. So it's like our parents have been trolling us like, since birth pretty much, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's also just who we are as a Vietnamese community. We don't take things too seriously. We really just enjoy life, day by day. We don't like really stress over things. And we're very lighthearted as a community, I would say. Um, and I think that's why people love Vietnamese people, is that we do kind of like just take life day by day and just enjoy the moment. And I feel like that's something that I always find humorous that within our community and with Fada culture. So.
Yeah, I amen to that part because I will say that, being around as a queer Vietnamese, Khmer American, like I'm around a lot of queer Vietnamese folks, and boy, they are very sassy and they are very funny to be around. And actually, I
Mhm.
also realized, like, even growing up, uh, learning about my parents' joke or our parents' jokes, like
Mhm.
it did kind of rub off on me because I did tell my younger brother once, and I didn't remember that until he reminded me this past summer that I said that, our mom always wanted to have an abortion, and I was like, I
Yeah.
didn't realize I was that bad, but like, wow, it's like, I think that kind of hits a little bit, but that is the kind of, mean-spirited humor that sometimes we're guilty of having. But
hmm
yeah,
It,
yeah.
it's crazy. It's like this it's like a tough love type of mentality, right? Our parents have just kept us humble from day one. And I think nothing is more humbling than saying that you were found in the trash. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say, thank you so much for being on here and also shedding some light into this work that you're doing and being able to give us insight about what it means to create and foster connections within this community. And I feel like I've been very much inspired by your content because it's part of the reason why I went to Vietnam last December on my own, and also why I decided that maybe it's my finally time that I get to really dig into my Vietnamese roots and start learning the language. And boy, it really makes a difference. And I really appreciate content like yours that really serves to bring humor and joy, but also a level of community.
thank you so much, Randy. I appreciate those kind words, and it means a lot to me that people have felt some type of impact on the profile. And I always feel like if this is my purpose in life, I'm fine with it. I really do enjoy providing the content that I feel like I said, on a daily basis, like things that we can all relate to or inspire people to, right? Whether, like you said, it's like going back to Vietnam for the first time ever, or like for the first time in a long time, right? Or being motivated to learn the language again, or hey, even discovering like new Vietnamese food outside of pho, banh mi, right? Because there's a lot of people that even within our community that have not yet explored like the variety of food
Hmm.
options we have, right? And there's a ton of people that have never been back to Vietnam ever.
Hmm.
And I feel that if that's the impact that photo culture has on the community here and around the world, um, I'm very humbled to be able to do that. So
Thank you for listening to the Banh Mi Chronicles podcast. Look out for future episodes and don't forget to rate and review my podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.